Welcome to Concussion Talk Podcast. I'm Nick Mercer. Please visit my website at www.concussiontalk.com and visit me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at Concussion Talk. And please visit my Patreon page at www.patreon.com/concussion talk. Thanks. And now this is after all that out of the way, this is episode 41 of Concussion Talk Podcast, and I'm with Katy Winton, and Katy is back home in Scotland now. That's right? And
yep, back home in Scotland.
And Katy is an enduro mountain bike racer, and she races for the Trek Factory Racing TFR Enduro team. And so Katy, I guess three-part question really. Who is Katy Winton, first of all? And second, then can you also just explain to people who, although you have lots of fans, because you did place third last year and 2017 overall in the Enduro World Series. Or you placed third last year. You have lots of fans. Not everyone not listening to this podcast knows what enduro racing is, so could you just tell everyone who Katy is and what enduro racing and enduro racing round mountain bike is?
Yeah, no worries, Matt. Well, thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
You've done a pretty good job of explaining who I am. I'm just a enduro mountain bike racer from Scotland.
Okay.
I'm 25 years old, if that helps anybody. The enduro is a discipline in mountain biking, and essentially we ride up the hill and race down. And we do several different stages that are predominantly downhill, and then it's the cumulative time of those stages added together. Fastest time wins, essentially. But the transitions, so the climbs between the stages, we've got a certain time to be at the top of each stage, so you can't just poodle around. You've got to be at the start for your start time, otherwise you get time penalty. So you need that endurance to last all day, but the racing is only on the descent. So sometimes the races can be 1 day, sometimes they're 2 days. We also only get one run of practice, so we only get one time down each stage to have a look at it, and then that's it. And we do it all over the world. It's quite a global series. So this year we've been in New Zealand and Tasmania and Madeira already. Other years we've been in Colombia, Chile. Later this year we've still got to go to Canada, America, Italy, France, and Switzerland actually. So we get to see a lot of the world and just go to the top of the hills and ride down them as fast as we can. So it's a pretty good, fun sport to do.
It sounds like it. Awesome. So where in Canada are you going? Where in Canada?
We'll be in Whistler.
Whistler, okay. That's the other side of the country for me, but I'm sure the people in Whistler will love it. But actually, in episode 39 of this podcast, I talked to Tim Vonderjood, who is the sports marketing director. He's involved with all the off-road teams, right? And he said
all
that
the teams, yeah.
He said you guys on Enduro do everything. Do like your bike prep and prep, like if you have flat tires or you gotta take care of your bike on the course and stuff for the day. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. We just get sent out, so we could be out for up to 7 hours at a time and not see any of our mechanics or anything like that. So we have to be pretty self-sufficient out in the mountains doing our thing. So like if we're out for 7 hours and stuff, racing might only be 50 minutes, but we've got to still be self-sufficient for that whole time. So that's all our food, our bike spares, everything. You've got to be ready in case the weather changes or you have an issue with the bike or you need more food or whatever. You need to have it all with you.
I got a bike question. This is kind of not a concussion question now, but a bike question. In 02, I biked across Canada, and we got a bunch of flat tires and spokes, and my spokes broke a couple times. So what do you carry on you for the day? Like, how many tubes or tires do you carry? And do you carry any? What do you do if you snap a spoke? Do you anything like that?
So spoke-wise, I don't care anything for spokes. If they break, then the wheels should be true enough to kind of last. I think they'll be okay. And
because you just wrap the spoke around the next spoke kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's pretty okay. We've actually got these things that are called Cusco, and they are inserted in between the tire and the rim of the wheel, to try and protect the tire off the rim so it doesn't pinch or doesn't get cut. Yeah. And then I have these. We've got sealant in there, so there's no tube inside. Oh, okay. And the sealant essentially should seal a hole that's in the tire, or we've got these little poker things that you can poke into the hole and seal the hole, and then you just pump it back up with the sealant, and then with the poker it should all be good. So.
Okay, well, thanks. And now, so this year I've ridden to the website, which I've linked in my description of this, but you're injured in the first. The first leg, first round, second round, first leg. Is that right, or something like that? It's like
second round, first stage. I only got a minute maybe into the first stage.
What does that mean? What does a round stage mean? Like, you raced one race in New Zealand, right? Rodanda.
Right? Yeah. So Rotorua, I raced that race. That was 5 or 6 stages. But they're all contained within one day, so we race them all on the same day. You start at 10 o'clock, you finish at 5 or whatever. But you go through all the various different stages. The second round was in Tasmania, and what they actually did was we practiced stage 1 on Saturday morning, had a break, and then went straight up and did race stage 1. And then the next day we would have done 4, 5, 6 stages. Whatever it was, I don't even remember. It didn't matter because I didn't get to do it.
Yeah.
So I practiced stage 1 totally fine, and then went back up to race stage 1, and then.
So what happened on that? What happened on that day?
Well, so
how'd you crash, or what happened?
I slipped on. I was on top of a rock, and I slipped off the rock basically and gouged out my leg as I tipped over and fell down. Just as I tipped over, I looked down and I was like, "Oh, I'm not going to get out of this one," and just landed onto rocks. Apparently on my head, I don't really remember that because my leg was really very, very painful. That kind of took away from.
So your leg was your main concern, was it?
Yeah, definitely. But the real, with the concussion that I sustained, it was actually the week before in Rotorua. I crashed twice within a short space of time, fairly hard onto my head, sort of face first into the ground at quite high speed. So already that week before Tasmania, I was not quite right.
Yeah.
As you'll know from speaking to Tim, we, as Trek, are working with head check. Yeah. So my soigneur, James Rickles, well onto it with all the head stuff. So he was doing all the tests that you can do on the head check thing.
Yeah.
And just keeping an eye on me, checking. And then I basically just shouldn't have raced in Tasmania, to be perfectly honest. Yeah. I thought it was okay. But I wasn't, I don't think. I mean, that's why I crashed again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And your balance is out and just everything's just reacting a little bit slower and whatnot. So, it was less than ideal.
So how was your leg, for example? Let's start with that. How's your leg now?
My leg now is healed, as with my head. So it's a good situation to be in. Yeah. But it was horrifically painful just because it was right on my shin, and it basically was like a cheese grater down my shin,
one of those
kind of thing. Yeah. Oh my gosh, so painful. I thought I felt like I knew I hadn't broken my leg, but I felt like I should have broken my leg just to justify the amount of pain I was in. Because it was just a scratch at the end of it. I got 4 stitches in it, and then once the swelling went down and stuff like that, it was totally fine. And it's healed up really well.
Good.
So yeah, that was lucky. But I guess it kind of took away from the head thing, but that's fine. I just couldn't believe how painful it was.
So you stopped racing that day, right? You stopped racing as soon as you were diagnosed with concussion, or you just couldn't finish? You couldn't finish the stage because your injuries.
Because
your
my leg was way too painful.
Yeah,
I couldn't put weight through it or anything like that. Like, I would have lost way too much time if I tried to start rolling down the hill. And because it was so swollen and stuff, and it was bleeding a lot, like it was bleeding heaps. So it wouldn't have been wise for me to carry on. And I think I knew in myself that, you know, I'd had a massive crash. And I think when you've had a massive crash like that, you kind of are a little bit shaken up.
Yeah.
So the stage that I would have had to ride down was not an easy stage for sure. So it would have been a lot of different features. So we've got lots of different stuff. Like this particular place in Tasmania is very rocky. So there's a lot of rocks there. There's a lot of roots. It had just rained, so it's slippy. So the terrain's quite difficult, regardless of whether you've got a scratched out leg or not.
Yeah. So you this race when you were concussed, you got your concussion. When was that? What, that was March 31st, end of March?
Yeah, end of March. The second last week in March, and then again. So I basically had 3 head hits within 6 days.
Oh, ouch. Yeah. So how did you feel? Like, do you remember? Do you remember how you felt exactly after or I guess what you said your leg was paining, so that was your main concern. But but say on the day after. Do you remember?
The day after, I was actually pretty good. I think I was just glad to be okay. I knew that there was definitely no way that I was gonna. There was no way I could race. There's no, because I could have still raced if I wanted to, but there was no way I could put my body into that situation or that exertion or anything like that. So I guess there was some, it's just the shock of it all. But it was really, the week before is really when I felt the effects, I guess, of having hit my head. Because the first time I hit it when I was in Rotorua, usually I can hit my head and I'm pretty much okay. But this time I hit it and I was like, well, you've actually hit your head here. Like when you have, I guess your body just tells you. It's like, oh, that was actually a good one.
Don't do that again.
Yeah, totally. And then I did do it again in the next run. But so I just wasn't right that week on the lead up to Tasmania. So before I even had the leg smashing crash, I was just, irritable. My energy was really low. I was just, I was getting headaches, but I didn't really.
Do you normally get headaches?
No, but sometimes I get a wee bit of a dehydration headache, kind of just a wee bit of a squeeze. But I think as an athlete, you're so used to pushing through pain and stuff like that. So a mild, dull pain really is insignificant. It doesn't mean anything. It's just it's just kind of there. And then the week after Tasmania, I felt fine. I was just all right. I was more concerned about my leg and all that. I did a bit of a run and was quite not really active. I was having a rest week, but I was still wandering about and doing stuff and felt okay. And it wasn't kind of till the week after when I got back to Christchurch and sort of actually stopped. When I stayed in Tasmania for another week and had a bit of a holiday. It wasn't until I actually stopped that I was like, oh, yeah, maybe I have got a constant headache.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I didn't realise. I was just kind of trucking on. But then I was like, oh, yeah, I do. And I hadn't been driving when I was in Tasmania, and then I was driving when I got back to Christchurch, and I was like, ooh, feels like somebody's squeezing my head when I'm driving. And then turning from the counter from the fridge to the counter, just that spin, I would just lose it. And I was just like, oh. So even, it was just just getting through the day was a decent deal. And I was like, oh, this seems to be taking a lot more out of me than it usually does.
And that lasted for about a week, you said? In Tasmania at least. And then, a week in Tasmania. Then you got back to Christchurch.
Yeah, and I was okay. It was almost like it took 7 days before it really kind of hit me. There seems to be a bit of a delay with me.
Okay.
With things like this. And then I saw a doctor. So 2 weeks after the crash, I saw a doctor. And she was not too worried about me. She was like, no, you're not particularly bad, but you're not right. You're not okay.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is I want you to stay here in New Zealand and be treated by me for 4 weeks to make a full recovery, because we don't want you travelling home in the jet lag.
Yeah.
Because obviously jet lag just this lack of sleep thing just has a huge effect on the body, brain, everything, regardless of your condition.
Yeah.
So we were like, let's just take that out, stay for 4 weeks, get treated by me, and then hopefully things should be better by then. But at the moment, you just need to rest. And we were like, right, okay, come back in 2 weeks' time, and we'll do this treadmill test to, basically, I guess it's just like a blood flow test to see how I respond to the change in the blood flow, and see how that's responding in the body, and then start to reintroduce activity, because although the brain needs to rest to recover, it also needs to do stuff to regenerate, because otherwise you just get stuck in this state of sort of doing nothing.
Yeah. And
especially when you're used to doing a lot, like activity or, brain stimulation, everything like that. If you just take that away, then it's just going to be like, oh.
Yeah.
What? So initially needs that rest to have its recovery, and then once it's had that, needs to start to regenerate, but in a really controlled manner. So after the 2 weeks, I actually felt a lot better. I had proper rest, and I was able to do things again, and I knew that I was okay again, because I was annoyed that I wasn't on my bike.
Yeah.
And initially I was like, I don't even want to be on my bike, because like, it just would not be good. I just knew that it was just not going to be okay. Like, I was not right. So
you didn't want to be
annoyed.
You didn't want to be because you didn't want to enter bike because you knew you wouldn't compete well, or you didn't feel like it at all. Just didn't feel like you had the balance or anything like that.
I just knew that there was something not right, and if I was on my bike, I would not be responding properly. Basically, I just didn't think that the body and brain were not talking quite right yet, and I was like, I don't even want to put myself in that situation, because I'll crash again, and I can't afford to crash again. So I just need to rest. I think your body just knows. It just goes, no. We just need you to do nothing for a wee bit longer. Yeah,
it's like, your idea of nothing too is also. I follow you on Instagram, which is at Miss Winton, at Miss Winton, on Instagram, and you started doing runs and lots of hikes and stuff around. Just on Christchurch, obviously. So So when did you decide you could? How did you feel when you decided I'll take my first run or I'll do my first hike? How long do you think it was about?
It was probably about 2-3 weeks. Once I'd done the treadmill test, and we found because I kind of went in after 2 weeks after I'd seen the doctor initially, and I kind of still had a headache. And it was so dull. It was like a 1 out of 10, but it was still there. So then we did the treadmill test and ran, and we basically worked to the point where I started to get more symptoms. So basically, my headache was just kind of there, and then it just suddenly, once I was working pretty hard, it just spread across my head, and then that was our signal. Okay, right, stop. And now we work at 80% of that heart rate, and you're only allowed to go to that. So it was 182 when my symptoms changed and got worse. So we were working at a max heart rate of 150 when I was doing exercise from that point on. So this was okay, we can bring exercise in now, but you need to stay below 150 heart rate. Right. So I started going for easy road rides, it had to be very easy runs, which was incredibly frustrating because it's literally a very slow trot. And then running? I was doing some hikes and stuff. Yeah, I love running. Oh, yeah? Absolutely love running. So,
Never liked it.
Liked it.
Would just give me because
I can't do it.
I can't do it now, so it's all right.
Yeah. That's a good...
It worked out well.
Out for that. Yeah. Yeah, that's perfect. So, yeah.
So, okay, I was going to ask you about that. And so... Yeah, so I know. So now, as I mentioned earlier, you're back in Scotland now. So you just got back on Saturday, right? So how is that? How is you mentioned earlier the jet lag and all that? So how did you find that now this time? Any different?
Totally fine. No difference. That's what I'm pleased about. I think we totally did the right thing, waiting, making sure that I was fully okay. So I actually gave myself 6 weeks from when I initially saw the doctor. So I'd have 4 weeks to be better, and then 2 weeks of being normal before I put myself in the situation of going through the jet lag. Went through the jet lag, and I feel just as I normally would feel if I'd done this journey. So it's great. It's really good. And like, I was riding my bike last week in Christchurch in the bike park, doing all the tracks I would do before, no issues, and actually feeling quite fast on the bike. So I was just like, sweet.
And you could push yourself?
This is so good that we've waited this long. What's that?
You could push yourself? Like, you could actually...
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I could push, and I felt like I was pushing fast as well. I wasn't holding back on the descent.
That's what I mean,
it's just nice. Yeah, it's just really nice to kind of go there and feel like whole.
Yeah.
Brain, body are all talking together. We are working. Because, you've got to react really quickly and stuff like that. So if anything's just slightly out, because I was working on my vestibular system because the balance and things were just slightly out. You could see it when she did this. So she does the eye test, and she's got her pen and she's moving it from side to side, and my eyes were just slightly off.
Yeah.
So we worked on the balance system, and that seemed to just, once that got a little bit more work and just a bit more training, it seemed to just reset everything a little bit more. So that was really good. Yeah,
that's good. Actually, well, you sound like you know a lot about concussion now, but I'm wondering, how much did you know about concussion before the injury? And so what have you learned about concussion since your injury? And obviously you know a lot just from vestibular and balance tests from your professional cycling career, but what have you learned about concussion per se?
A lot, actually. I didn't really know all that much about it before. Just the sort of basics of, if you hit your head, take some time out or whatever, the basics. But actually, on Instagram, Concussion Doc, so he's concussion_doc. He's amazing. Like, he's done loads of videos explaining actually what happens in the concussion, that it's not actually brain bruising. They don't think it's brain bruising anymore. It's actually more to do with the brain wiggling. I can explain. I can basically. Yeah, no,
I've seen those videos. Yeah, I've seen those
so
videos.
Good, aren't they?
They're good. Yeah. His last thing.
Explains it so well.
Yeah. So that's your recommendation, is concussion_doc.
Yeah, big time. If you go and check out his page, and everything is really easy to understand. The way he explains it, he draws pictures so you really understand it and everything. And just, my biggest concern when I had this concussion, and really the doctors as well, was actually how many head hits I've had basically in the last 3.5 years. Although they've not been diagnosed as full, I think that's the thing with a concussion. You don't need to be knocked out. It doesn't need to be an absolutely crazy mental crash. It's these head hits adding up, and I think I've had 7 sort of concussions undiagnosed, just under the radar, in the last 3.5 years.
Cool. Wow.
And so that was her concern, and this is what the concussion doc talks about. So I was like, okay, so I've had a lot of concussions, potential concussions the last couple of years. How many is too many? Yeah. As is the first time I've had actually had symptoms from hits that weren't really that bad. And I'm like, so at what point do I stop racing? Does this mean I need to stop racing? Can I afford to have another hit? And the concussion doc talks about it, and he's like, it's not so much about how many hits you've had, but it's how well you recover between the hits.
Yeah. So you want to make sure this time that you gave yourself a good recovery.
Absolutely. Before I put myself in a position where I could hit my head again. So that's why I missed Madeira, which was a couple of weeks ago. That was the 3rd round of the Enduro World Series. I missed that because there was no way I wouldn't be fit or strong, because I would have done nothing for ages. But also there's no way I was going to put myself at risk of crashing again that soon. It was only 4 weeks after. So I wanted to make sure that I had plenty of time. And actually Trek, the team I ride for, they have been amazing in terms of their support and things. They're just like, nope, you just come back when you're ready. Like, you totally great. Take the lead on this. They're not putting pressure on me to come back, which is brilliant, because, when you've got a head injury stuff, you're like, you want to come back, but you're constantly thinking about how you're feeling, that you don't need to be more worried about getting back in a rush.
Yeah.
You want to make sure, okay, I've got time, I can relax, I can do this as long as it's going to take, because you just don't know. Each and everyone's different, and each person's different, so it's important to have that time. So I'm really grateful for them for being so understanding and supportive of it. It's great.
Have you always been like this wise and about your what you need to do, or have you just I guess because you kind of answered my next question was, what have you learned from your concussion recovery journey? But you kind of answered it almost. So you've seen you know a lot about yourself. Obviously as a pro athlete, you must know a lot about yourself anyway, physically. But what have you learned? Have you learned anything about yourself or about? Well, yes, about yourself. What have you learned that you think you didn't know before this injury? Resilience and whatnot?
I think it's more just been like understanding my because I don't know what normal was, you know what I mean? Like, you don't pay attention to what normal is.
Yeah.
And so then you all of a sudden you've got this constant headache, and you're like, but did I have a headache before? You know, like did I just feel like this before? And because people want to, totally, like just because people want to know how I am, that I'm all of a sudden thinking I have a headache. I think I've got a headache because everybody thinks that I should have a headache.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Yeah. So. Yeah,
totally.
So you think you've learned about yourself just you didn't know. You didn't really pay attention to normal, and now you know a lot about yourself, how your body acts, and how you
definitely
what is normal
choices.
Yeah.
You know, and actually this time taking a break away and letting myself fully recover is so much more valuable than getting back to racing. Like, so much more valuable. And I think that's kind of the biggest thing that changed. So in 2018 in May, I had a really massive smack to the head on a rock, and my helmet was really good at that time, and it just like crumbled like an eggshell, so it totally dispersed all the energy. It was amazing. I didn't feel too bad after that. I think that was actually the start, though. I think because I didn't rest properly after that. You know, I didn't have the support because I didn't know the doctors that I needed to know to get concussion support in Scotland and stuff like that. I just kind of assumed, in a week's time it should be better. Essentially it should be, but with a hit like that, it needs to be longer. I think I didn't get the full test. You know, I could have done with more screening.
Yeah.
But that was when I had that hit. I kind of just my perspective just completely changed, because I was just like, I want to live the rest of my life. You know, I want to be able to do so much other stuff, and I don't want to risk keeping hitting my head all the time.
Yeah.
So I think it just changed the priorities in my mind. It was just like, you know what, actually, if I'm going to keep hitting my head racing, then it's not sustainable for me. So it's nice to have gone through this experience and have that kind of real scare where I'm like, oh man, is this going to be me now? And then come through it and recover and have that time and be like, okay, actually, we don't, it's not a concussion problem. It's not the problem of hitting my head. It's actually the management of it and managing my recovery and managing the sort of just what I do after having a head hit and taking it more seriously, I think.
Jeez, so. You're a very, very sage young lady. to sound really, what's her name for? I forget her name for. Yeah, but that's impressive thoughts about that. But is there anything else you'd like to say about your concussion recovery that you may not have said about that I haven't asked questions about?
Well, so one of the biggest things actually was through diet. So I did a lot of to just try and just aid the recovery and everything like that. So amino acids are huge for just support in general life, but I was actually eating quite a lot of protein. So I was trying to get 2 grams per kilogram of protein per day, just to try and support my system as much as possible. But I was also on supplements, magnesium, fish oil, vitamin D3, and creatine, which I didn't know was actually a good support for brain function.
Wow.
Because and I've written it down because I was like, I just read various different things and then just was like, sweet, enough professional people are telling me creatine's good. I'm just going to do it, because the concussion doctor was talking about it, my nutritionist was talking about it, my other nutritionist was talking about it, so there's lots of people telling me. So one of the biggest things with concussions is, as you know, is the ATP deficit.
Yeah.
So the energy in the energy molecule, ATP.
Yeah.
You get that deficit, and the creatine helps prevent the ATP depreciation, basically.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, the ATP depletion, yeah. So, but the thing with all of these things is because we've gone UCI this year, I've just kind of been like, okay, I'm not taking, I don't want to go any, I didn't really do supplements anyway, but I was just like, there's no way I'm going to do any supplements because you just don't know what's in anything anymore.
Oh, yeah.
So I worked with my nutritionist, and we found some magnesium fish oil, vitamin D3, and the creatine that were all tested and, should be free of anything.
UCI approved and everything.
Yeah, basically.
UCI is the cycling body, the cycling regulatory body, basically, or the main body. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so we'll get drug tested at our races and stuff like that, so we can't have anything in our systems. But the problem with that was that I started taking all these supplements once I'd had my concussion, and the whole thing is that if you've got your magnesium's up, your fish oil's on, your D3, your vitamin D3's up, you've got a baseline of creatine, then the system's already in a better place for if it does sustain a concussion, because it's got all these stores and resources. Whereas if you sustain the concussion and then these stores are already low, then it's kind of like you're just already on a back foot. So that is something I learned.
So there you go. Just trying to add that to your diet, are you?
Yeah, that's another thing I learned, how important the supplements are, but also the importance of the protein as well, with all the amino acids, just to support the whole system to just working on healing and having the fuel that it needs in quality. Another thing that I learned
go for it.
is I'm on a roll. Is because the other part of the diet was the low inflammatory. So I was off refined sugar, no alcohol, no smoking. So I had to give up smoking.
Oh, you did?
I'm joking. I don't smoke.
No, I didn't think so.
And then I was off gluten and dairy and stuff, just anything that could cause any sort of inflammation in my body. I just cut it out anyway. So just to try and give everything as much of a chance as I could.
So yes, nutrition and diet are essential. They're very important.
Definitely.
For you as an athlete, and also for concussion recovery for anybody who's just had concussion, no matter what the circumstances are.
Mm-hmm. Do you use diet as well? Or has that been something that you've...
I don't do it in particular. Well, my diet is kind of weird now because I had cancer 2 years ago, colon cancer.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, so I have my colon not fully removed, but like mostly a subtotal colectomy, is what they called it. So most of my colon is gone. So beef is out of my diet now because it doesn't digest well. So I'm on but luckily I'm living Newfoundland, so fish is fantastic.
Oh, perfect! Yep.
And plenty of it. So eat all the fish and vegetables and chicken, but no beef and pork are basically out of my diet. But that's not necessarily because of my brain injury. But I do feel a lot better. It's weird that I feel better after cancer, and now the chemotherapy's done, feel better because that's been like that. But yeah. So
no, that's great, and the fish is good. You've got fresh fish everywhere all the time.
Fish
is
fantastic. I'm thinking actually, I can see in the window a fish. Fresh cod fillets. So I mean, the cod has been in since last week, and it's been great. So the cod, and so I eat a lot of cod, or a couple times a week, and fish tacos and everything. But they had nothing in particular that I love. I like avocado, but that doesn't grow on trees here. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I bet.
gotta get that shipped in, obviously. It's like avocados in Scotland. I don't think you get any avocados in Scotland, do you? You don't grow them there.
We do.
Oh yeah.
No one grows them there, but we do get them. Actually, they're
You
cheaper
don't
in
grow
Scotland
them,
than they are in New Zealand. I can tell you that. That's
Oh, yeah?
ridiculous.
You don't grow
Yeah,
them.
it's like
You don't grow them on there, can you?
no, I don't think so.
Didn't think
I
so.
mean, I could be wrong, but I don't think we do.
Yeah. Yeah. So we don't. There's not many. Well, there's obviously greenhouses and stuff, but there's no other little fresh vegetables and obviously potatoes and stuff. Like I don't think the climate in Newfoundland is much like Scotland, but not as lush.
Mm.
Newfoundland
Was it not as lush?
It's more rocky. It's rockier. Sorry.
Ah,
And,
okay. Good.
It's the nickname for it's the rock, but yeah, but so kind of know what our diets are probably similar. Well, yours is more professional athlete diet, but
Yes, too.
yeah, but actually before we started this podcast, I asked you how you got into cycling, your professional cycling. How did you get into that? Like, what made Track Factor Racing say we want Katy Winton on our team?
Basically, Tracy Mosley, who was the current world champion after 3 years, she's a British female, absolutely amazing woman. She's got so much time for everybody and is so keen to encourage.
She's a champion in what discipline of cycling?
And she's world champion in downhill mountain biking.
Okay.
World Cup champion several times in downhill, but she's been 3 times Enduro World Series champion. So she's a bit of a monster woman. She's absolutely amazing. So she was coming to the end of her career, and it was just right place, right time, as with a lot of things. And she basically was in my corner and telling Trek to sign me.
Nice. You haven't disappointed.
And so then the opportunity opened up, and nice. I got in. So
you haven't disappointed because you're finishing well.
Yeah, it's been good. I've been really pleased. The first year I moved from 10th to 6th, and I was a bit like, oh man, like I've been signed for this huge team, and I'm not improving on the trajectory that I wanted to. But then the following year, that was me jumped up to 3rd, which was insane. I had my first podium in Ireland. I was 2nd, and I was just like, oh my goodness, wow, we can actually do this. It was a lot of perseverance and a lot of resilience, because I was just like in 2016, when the first year I signed, I was not going that well at all, and I was a little bit like, I had a couple of races where my preparation was perfect and I raced my heart out, and I was still like 7th or something, and I was just like, maybe because you never know, when a team takes the risk on you, you're taking a risk on yourself as well, because you don't know whether you're going to be good enough. They don't know whether you're going to be good enough. You just lay it all down and see what happens. And when I was coming 7th, after laying it all down, I was like, oh man, like maybe this is it. So when I came back the following year and was actually performing and onto the podium, I was just like, wow, thank goodness, because this team's taking a risk and I'm actually able to give back. So
that's great. That's great. I mean, that's some very impressive results for sure. So congrats.
Thank you.
Before that, you were just racing in Europe, or in Europe tours or events. Like, how does that work? Sorry,
I raced cross country for 7 years till I was like 19. So in 2013 I moved to Enduro, because the Enduro World Series started then. And Enduro is just way more fun than cross country. Cross country, for those of the people that don't know, is basically like a mass start race. And you race laps of a course, which includes up and down. And it's off-road. And it's just an hour and a half of pain, basically, which is great if you're going well and you're winning. But when you're not winning, it's just hellish. So I was not having a great time with that. So I moved over to Enduro and just absolutely loved it. Just absolutely loved it. I was just like, I'd never wanted to be good at anything more than this. And so, when you just find your thing, I was just like, sick, this is awesome. So I started that, and I was just working in a cafe, and I was looking after kids after school and stuff, just to get the funds up, and then was touring in Europe, and then headed out to America and Canada for the rounds out there, and just did the full series just to try and make my way up. And then it was the end of 2015 when I signed with Trek. So
great, that's awesome. So This darn cough still come back. But
No.
it's annoying. Anyway, hopefully clear up soon. But I guess before we sign off, then just wanted to ask you about something about your. Oh yeah, so in Jersey you love it so much. So this is back to my biking, my days cycling.
Yeah.
How fast can you change the tire? Do you think? And not that you time over times, but like, what's your that question? And what's your what thing do you really hate fixing on the bike when you get like a I don't know a dented rim or like a flat or like your chain snaps or something? Like, what's your nightmare?
My nightmare. So changing a tire, I don't know how quick I can do it.
No.
I don't know how fast I can do it. I have absolutely no idea. So I couldn't even give you a ballpark.
No, but
you
I'll say it's faster than me. I do that.
But my nightmare would be getting a puncture near the top of a stage, and we've got those insert things in, and they're actually just quite hard to get out and then get the tire off as well. So it's quite a bit of a mission. So then I would ride all the way down the stage because those things protect the rim.
Okay.
And then and that would be a nightmare because I'd just be like throwing away time. And then I get to the bottom and I'd have to try and fix it. So that would probably be my nightmare.
If you had a flat tire and you're just riding, this is totally cycling stuff, but like if Jesus, stupid cough. Anyway, if you had a flat tire, if your bike was down to just like rubber in your rim, basically. Would that
yeah, essentially
would that hurt? Would that like hurt your your shotgun, your arm or your butt, depending on where the flat was? But would you find that like painful, jarring on your?
I don't know because touch wood, that's not happened.
No.
So, you just like I have had a flat on the front of my bike, and that was at the top of the stage and had to ride all the way to the bottom of the stage, and it didn't have an insert in. If it's got the insert in, it does protect the rim a lot more, so you can ride quite normally. But when it doesn't, and you're just riding on the lip, what's that?
You can ride aggressively on that?
I think you can ride pretty aggressively on it.
Yeah.
But the front one's a little bit easier because you can just kind of put your weight back and just slide around a little bit.
Right.
But it's the rolling speed that's a pain when you have a flat because you obviously don't roll as quick. So if you get that at the top of a stage, it's very frustrating because you've got to get all the way to the bottom. Really. So that's the best thing to do is to get to the bottom before you do anything about it, because if you start doing it and it takes absolutely ages, the time that you're just going to lose even more time. You better just pummel it to the bottom and then fix it at the bottom.
Right.
And hopefully the rim's okay.
Right. And actually, one last question about the Enduro World Series. So you said there are rounds and stages. So you were in New Zealand and Tasmania. Yeah. That was a round or a stage. How does that work?
I'm calling a round as an event. So an event is Rotorua was an event. Okay. Tasmania was an event.
And has stages within there?
What's that?
And there are stages within that round?
Yeah. So Rotorua is a round. It's round 1. So it's like event 1. And it had 5 stages.
Okay.
Within that race. So the race was 5 stages long. Okay. And then in Tasmania it was 5 stages long. And then in Madeira it was 9 stages long, but over 2 days. Okay. And that was round 3.
And next round is where?
Is Canazei in Italy, which is in the Dolomites. It's absolutely stunning.
Oh yeah, when's that?
That is the end of June.
Cool. Hopefully there's I guess it's cold in the Dolomites, but not too cold in Italy, so it's probably mild. It
just depends what's happening in the mountains. It can be pretty unpredictable. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
See.
Hopefully we'll see. So thank you so much for being on this podcast. This is a long one, but it was a great one, and you really know what you're doing and what you want out of this recovery and this season and just your whole career in cycling. So It's very impressive. So
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you very much for
No
anything.
problem. Thank you for having me on.
All right, thanks. As always, music at the beginning of this podcast is by Ben Sound. www.bensound.com.